Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's TP Talks webinar. I am joined today by Christopher Giuliano, Vice President, Finance, Specialty Revenue Cycle of CVS Health. Chris will be sharing best practices on adapting and implementing automation to improve back office, customer experience, insights into automation tools, partnerships, and functions, the future of back office automation at CVS. I am your moderator today, Trace Anderman, Executive Vice President and Customer Experience Strategist with Teleperformance. Before we begin, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. There are several related resources available for you to download in the resource widget to the right of your screen. This webinar is designed to be interactive. You will see multiple icons at the bottom of your console. If you have any questions, as we'd love for you to interact with us, please submit your questions in the Q&A window on the left of your screen. You can do this anytime during the conversation, and we'll address them during our designated Q&A session towards the end. And should you have any technical issues, please click on the Help widget. It's the box that looks like a question mark. If you would like to reach us, please use the email widget. First and foremost, what is TP Talks? As curators of the customer experience, we're pleased to bring you this series of webinars called TP Talks. TP Talks is packaged in 30-minute bite-sized webinar segments and designed to help you as curators of customer experience at your companies to help you learn from best practices, big trends, innovations, and real-world success stories from people like yourselves. Teleperformance has worked diligently with our clients to curate this content for you, and there are several of these available on demand. You can access them in the resource widget to the right of your screen. A little about Teleperformance, your host for today's webinar. Teleperformance has been serving leading industry brands for almost 4 decades, with a focus on supporting our clients in over 170 plus markets around the world. If you've ever called for customer care, engaged in a chat, filled out a form, or posted online about a brand, chances are you've interacted with us. We are a leading company across several verticals and channels, including customer care, technical support, customer acquisition, digital solutions, analytics, back office, and other specialized services to ensure consistent and positive customer interactions. Why do I share this with you? Because Teleperformance is committed to partnering with our clients to find innovative ways to manage obstacles, and we are committed to helping our clients succeed. This webinar is a reflection on our commitment to that very concept. We are particularly proud of the awards we win and the recognition we get from analysts in various leadership quadrants that are published, and the recognition by many of our clients for the ability to help curate their customer experience and make a palpable difference to their brand is a manifestation of our mission. I'd now like to introduce you to the topic of our guest speaker. Chris Giuliano is the Vice President of Finance, Specialty Revenue Cycle for CVS Health. He is responsible for managing the revenue cycle operations for multiple CVS Health companies, including CVS Specialty Pharmacy and Quorum Specialty Infusion, that account for over $38 billion in annual revenue. Since joining in 2016, he has been leading a multi-year transformation of CVS Health's revenue cycle. Prior to joining CVS Health, Mr. Giuliano spent over 20 years providing revenue cycle consulting services for Big Four consulting firms. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Jason. Good morning from Arizona. Hopefully it's not cold in the rest of the country or wherever else everyone is dialing in for or from. I'm going to take everyone through what we at CVS have been working on over the last couple of years. For those who are familiar with revenue cycle, broadly defined as patient billing and collections, this will be familiar. For those who are not close to the industry and the work, I'll try to keep it straightforward and not use a lot of the acronyms that tend to get thrown around. As Trey said, I joined CVS about 3 years ago, but my entire career has been in revenue cycle. And in the CVS world, we have basically 3 company verticals. We have our retail stores, we have our PBM and our specialty pharmacy, and then we have Aetna. And the world that I support, which is heavily where most of our medical billing takes place, is within that PBM and specialty pharmacy world. So that's the area I'm going to talk to today and kind of take you through the plans over the last couple of years, which have led up to where we are and where we're going to move forward into in 2020 and 2021. As Trey said, there's about $38 billion that runs through our shops on a given year. It's extremely, high dollar claims, and it goes all the way down to low dollar, $15 claims. So volume-wise, we're dealing with millions and millions of claims. Because CVS is a national company and has a national footprint, even in our local level, the 11 companies that I support, we deal with all 50 states. So managed care for us and all the contracts that providers deal with, typically providers are used to 20 and 30 contracts. We have over 1,500 contracts in play at any one time. And if you add up the payers and the plan combinations, we've seen contract combinations go over 10,000. So what that means is for us, manual work in any way, shape, or form is inefficient to the nth degree, and we really can't tolerate it. We have many systems here. Unfortunately, most are either homegrown and or have been heavily updated and modified over the years, which makes it really difficult for us to use off-the-shelf products. And when we came together about 3 years ago when I joined and looked at the go-forward plan, the automation part of it became pretty clear that this was something we had to invest in. It wasn't something the revenue cycle itself had. It was something obviously CVS had, but as with anything with a large company, we found ourselves competing with all the other parts of the company for resources. So about 2 years ago, I made a decision that we were going to build and essentially fund our own analytics department. And over the last 2 years, we've hired somewhere around 15 people that do a combination of automation, reporting, and analytics work, and those teams work very closely together, and it's a cyclical process where one feeds the other. The work that we targeted, and I'll take you through some of the strategies and why we did it, really were those things that were simple and repeatable. The business, certainly has many opportunities, and some of them are transactional, some of them are extremely complex if-then type decisions. So we started with the simple ones that were very discrete, where we could take some, bulk work out of the manual processes and free up bandwidth. And that's again what we'll talk through today. So let me kind of take you through on the next page how we approach this. So for us, really, RPA today is a couple different things. It's really automation combined with reporting and analytics. And when we went down the road of how we were going to do this, because really there was nothing for us to work off of, we made a couple of core tenet decisions. First, we decided we'd target very repetitive tasks, things where colleagues were simply pushing the button, but they had to push the button. And unfortunately, we had more of those than we really cared to deal with. So that was the first thing. The second thing we agreed upon is we're not going to try to automate roles out. Certainly, it was an attractive idea to talk about. Could we take headcount out of the process? And over time, we are able to demonstrate benefits, but we didn't try to solve for those types of issues. Really, it was a task within a job. Could we automate that and free up bandwidth for someone to do more work or more efficient work or bring up quality? We did agree not to tackle those complex opportunities, but we did note them. We've inventoried them, and at some point, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the future work we're going to do, those will come back into the portfolio. We absolutely talked about measurement. As we tried to define why we were going to build a department, CVS, as any other company would be, asking, said, why are you going to spend money on this? We have this other department that can support you. So we agreed that we would track, define, measure, and hold ourselves accountable to an ROI, and we do that for each one of our projects. And then what we did is we made sure we aligned across our companies, at least those that are reporting up through me, so that there's visibility. And the leaders in each of the companies below me don't feel that they're left out. So when we talk about projects, we make sure that all the different stream leaders come together. We show why we're working on something, where the ROI is coming from, and then we talk about the future roadmap so that everybody knows where they sit in the queue, and if there's a reason to move someone up or down, they at least have a voice in that process, and then we flex and make decisions based on where we think the next best action is going to come from. So let me talk about a little more discreetly how we talk through and identify our opportunities. So it's fairly simple. We use a combination of an evaluation of the process itself. So can we make the process better? A very simple statement. But we look at and do a process diagram. We actually process flow it out, and then we try to figure out the steps that we're going to take out. And then we talk about that with the business leaders. And we say, okay, this is what we believe analytics and or automation and or reporting together will bring to the business. So do we have agreement? Because if we go down this road, we're going to align that this is the benefit and you're going to hold to that at the end. Third, what's the quantification? Is it truly going to deliver, and at the end, can I report on it? And then therefore justify why we're going to do the work. And only once we've checked those 3 boxes and everyone has signed off do we move something into production. So at times we do get a bit competitive with different types of initiatives, and as you would imagine, once business leaders see the benefit of automation, everybody starts jumping on the bandwagon. So holding to this kind of rubric has really helped us manage the inflow of ideas and allowed us to set and prioritize the work accordingly. So then once we go through an approver project, again, we go through a fairly straightforward approach to how we then move it into production. So it's more of a brainstorming to start. Really, we define in a deeper level what's the step-by-step process. We might have started with more of a phased task. Now we get down into the detailed steps of what we're going to work for. And truly, is it repeatable? And we've made some decisions to do more one-off work where it's a one-time event. There was pretty good ROI for those, but most often it's going to be repeatable. And then what are those triggers that need to be evaluated, understood, and accounted for in each of those processes? And that would include both inputs and outputs. It might include data sources. It might include systems that we might feed. Or it could include things that are going to be produced outside of the system where someone might want to access the data in a different way. We do understand how many steps we're trying to solve for, and then we try to, again, build out the roadmap that says, what am I going to take out of this? And at the end, how's it going to look? And we do really, at this point, still try to stay away from anything that's an if-then. And it's a very attractive place to go to. A lot of people in my team consistently say to me, let's go after this one. It's a really big complex. You have so many people working on it, but it's complex. And when you get into the if-then statements, it's really hard to automate those quickly. So unless we're going to build, a 6-month project, we've been trying to stay away from those, at least at this point in time. That'll come up in later in the discussion around our next, future steps over the next 12 to 18 months. So in the world of revenue cycle, especially on the back end, there are some very discrete functions that take place. And it ranges from, how do you send the bills out the door? How do you check payer websites and or check the status of claims? Things as simple as posting cash, which is very transactional and does, looks probably the same across industries. So we divided these up and basically tried to focus again on transactional areas where we thought we could make an effect or an impact on manual work being conducted by colleagues, again, with 1,500 or 1,800 contracts in play every day and over 1,400 colleagues. Any step I can take out of the process means I get efficiency somewhere else. With collections, for instance, when we call to status a claim, we've automated things like going out to the payer websites to grab a status update, but we didn't try to automate any of the work that they do on the phones. And there were some ways that you can use different automation to carve out and do work differently. That's not something we've tackled yet. It's going to come, but we did try to tackle the discrete steps. So for us, when we rolled down the road of doing automation 2 years ago, it was a very simple concept. We decided with just simply Visual Basic and a couple of virtual machines. And because we had internal staff that joined the automation team, they needed to get trained up. So we actually didn't go out and hire our first external candidate for almost, I think, a year. We had a couple of great candidates who knew the business, who came on board and decided they wanted to do something different. And quite honestly, that was probably one of the biggest successes we had. What we found is when corporate came in and gave us resources, which they've done, we spent as much time trying to explain the business to them as we did the initiative we were asking them to support. And where they would deliver the code as they believed it should have been developed, what we would find is it wasn't exactly what we needed, and it was partly because we didn't know how to ask the questions. And we had business people asking IT people, and there was no translator in between. So when we wound up bringing people from the business onto the analytics team, we noted the quality went way up, and because they actually understood the concepts and had actually worked in those jobs, out of the box, the solutions were much more targeted and much more easily implementable. So that was one of the big wins that we had early on. And then as time went on and we needed more complex tools, then we went outside. And we went and hired people who knew skills that we just didn't have and couldn't train internally. So today, and this is mostly, there's a couple of other tools. Today we use a combination of tools. Alteryx, which is basically a data wrangling tool. We use that to pull files out of different systems, combine them with automation. The tool allows you to actually automate the emails out to people. We create manual work lists with this, and I say manual because they're still in Excel, but nobody touches them. So every day or every hour, new lists can be sent out to supervisors and managers with no manual intervention anymore. So that's been a great pickup for us. Automation Anywhere, we're using that for our robotics at this point. Tableau for data visualization, VMware, Oracle for SQL, and then we still use Visual Basic. It's useful. It's a bit clunky. It does require a bit of a skill set to train people on, but it is still part of the core components of what we're using. So I'm going to take you through a couple of different examples for and how we've used this. Claim statusing, and I referred to this a little while ago. So Alteryx, again, this data wrangling tool, we've partnered that up with an Oracle SQL database so that the database is pulling the data out of the system. Alteryx is then querying that database on a very frequent basis during the day, and it could be every hour, every 60, or every 2 hours. We've used it in multiple different ways. It's then interfacing with an external vendor. In this case, it's Change Healthcare, where it's taking the data that it's pulled out of SQL, and it's bouncing it up against Change Healthcare to figure out what the status of these claims are. Change Healthcare is, again, that data gets brought back into Alteryx, and Alteryx can automate the feed into our core billing system. And so we're not having to status update certain claims, and we can take different types of transactions if you're familiar with things like the 270 or 271 or some of the 835 data that comes back from payers. We've been able to now automate, and while that's standard in hospitals, for us, truly because of the homegrown nature of our systems, we didn't have that automation built. So, I mean, imagine trying to deal with 1,500 payers and manually posting claims. Or cash. It was extremely labor intensive. So this was one of the situations where we combined multiple different systems to achieve an outcome, and we automated the claim statusing in this case. Similarly, if you went back in our business probably a little over 2 years ago, we were almost entirely Excel-based. Work list, data reports, dashboards were all in Excel. We invested in Tableau. We trained our staff and our reporting team up. And today, the combination of Alteryx, again, in this case, for pulling its data together out of multiple systems, using the SQL database, we've got, I believe, upwards of 70 different dashboards that are now available to the staff and to the managers. And in one of our companies, unfortunately, we have, believe it or not, 34 different systems and or applications to get a bill out the door. And I know it sounds extremely complex, and that's probably another whole hour discussion on how we got there. But a tool like this that can bridge systems and pull data together, normalize the data, and present it in a consolidated view was game-changing for us. It really, truly simplified a very complex process. So this was another area where leaders didn't have visibility into truly the trends in the core data set because they couldn't get to a single system. Here's how we solved it. So again, Alteryx pulled it together, combined it, normalized it. You almost can't tell which system the data is from anymore, and then Tableau is the reporting engine behind that then shows everyone where we're at. Similarly, we used a combination of Alteryx and Visual Basic to eliminate work in the cash posting area. So as I alluded to before, in the past, we were doing very manual data entry. Today, we're able to use Visual Basic to script a lot of the data entry activities. So it'll pull the 835 in, and where it can, it now knows how we've taught the bots and the RPA scripts how to post that cash within the system. So significant pickup for our cash posting team, just simply by using some Visual Basic here. And then, we've used the bots much more frequently over the last year. I'd say the first year was heavily Alteryx, combination of Alteryx with SQL, with Visual Basic to accomplish what we needed to do. Today, with the introduction of the Aetna team to the CVS world in the new environment, we now have access to resources we never had before. And so Aetna's team had done much more of the robotics area work in similar areas like claim processing, so they were used to what we were trying to accomplish. So we've actually partnered nicely with the Aetna team to start to leverage their knowledge of claim processing with our needs and use the bots that they had, which is really the Automation Anywhere team. So we've not had to hire those folks. But they partner with our team. We write the business case. We write the business requirements. They then build the bots. We bring the bots on, and we run them. So, again, this is one where we basically used a combination of Alteryx with the Aetna team using Automation Anywhere. We used Change Healthcare to do some statusing, and we took a lot of the touches out. So I think when we went back and looked, this year I think we quantified it as FTEs, but we didn't actually take FTEs out. But it's, I think, somewhere north of 40 FTEs this year that we've gotten out of our process, which, again, for us was a significant lift, and we know there's a lot more work that can come out. That was just in the last year. So we've proved out to ourselves that this is a business we want to be in. It's an investment that made sense for us. We've grown it a lot in the last 18 to 20 months, and we've added new tools, but it's not the end of where we're going to go. So as we put together our 2020 plan a couple of weeks ago and we looked at 2021, we're going to go into a few new areas that we've not even tried to tackle yet. So the first, really, we're going to start to go much more so across systems. So again, in that one instance where we had 30-some-odd systems working together, before we were trying to tackle a process in a system. Today or tomorrow, we're going to go across systems, and we're going to use tools we may not have today to do that. So again, if we might email a status to someone in our benefit verification team today, and then they would have to do the work. We're going to try to create the robotics that will do that for and among multiple systems and multiple roles. So that's something that's going to be new for us. Predictive analytics, we've talked pretty heavily in revenue cycle. It's a theme that you probably hear often, using predictive analytics to get ahead of things like claim denials, but we didn't have the capabilities built. So in the coming year, we're going to really invest in predictive analytics and tie that back to automation, really trying to prevent work before it even happens. So, simply if a payer typically denies because of X, Y, and Z, if we know that ahead of time and I can have a bot go out and say, pull a piece of documentation that the payer always requests, now I'm not going to get denied. So I can use the combination of predictive analytics and automation to take the work out of the system and never have to deal with it in the first place. And then really we're going to try and get into AI. We said we intentionally stayed away from a lot of the if-then decisions and those that are much more subjective, but it didn't mean we didn't want to deal with them. So as we get into the next year and 18 months, we're really going to try to double down on how can we use AI to really start to deal with these hairy issues that are complex, that couldn't be solved simply with a VBA or an Alteryx tool, but have huge benefits to the company. Not sure where this one's going to go. This one's probably the hardest of the ones we're going to tackle, but it's worth us trying to get it done. And the payoff for us is going to be huge. So we are going to definitely go down this road. For us, we've agreed this is a multi-year journey. We've been able to demonstrate significant value to the company to the point now that other parts of CVS have come to our team to ask for help, which has been pretty exciting. I mean, it validates not just the idea and the concept that it was working, but truly for those who are working on the team, it's been rewarding because they're being recognized outside of our area for the benefits they've delivered to the company. So we're certainly now supporting our teams on the front end in the benefits area. We're actually supporting some of the work in the pharmacies. To try, again, be enterprise thinking and cross-functional. So for the team, it's been pretty exciting. They've seen a real payoff, not just in terms of financial, but just overall recognition and rewards. So with that, I will take a breath, and if there are any questions, I am happy to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. You're well on your way on your RPA journey, and we really appreciate you sharing. We do have quite a few questions. So the first one, how are you using automation to reduce claim errors, and how do you see the future progressing?
Yeah, so, and I'll come at it from maybe two different ways. As I mentioned before, our process unfortunately tends to still be manual. Now, in parts of our company, like our specialty pharmacy where we do D.0 type billing, it's just a transaction set, it's very simple. The claims aren't even seen by people. It's truly system to system. But on some of our other companies, the home infusion company, for instance, where I would say it's some of the most complicated medical billing in the industry, home infusion itself, and it's very manual. The biggest thing for us has been automation around consistency and around standardization. Where we have 500 people doing billing and collections here, and those 1,500 managed care contracts, they're being administered by our colleagues because our systems yet don't have some of that capability of a normal hospital system. So what we've used the robotics for is really to drive consistency and standardization. That has allowed us to keep our claims clean. Obviously, that then drives up our collection rate, and we can start to anticipate outcomes in a way that we couldn't before because now we have a consistent process. We can forecast, we can model. We've taken variability out of the process.
Great. And keeping with that theme, have you implemented automation to reduce DSO, decreasing claim payment time?
Yeah, we have. And so there's probably, with any project, at least 2, if not 3 discussions around benefits. The first is, always cash. That's always on the table. Are we going to be able to bring up cash, which therefore brings down DSO or days in revenue or days in receivable? Sometimes they're used interchangeable. The second is just simply efficiency. So can we make it more efficient and take some cost out? And the third is quality. And that sort of ties into the first 2. So with every one of our processes, we try to do that. So some things we've automated here. I talked a bit about web portal scraping. We have a system that doesn't necessarily manually or automatically generate certain charges. So if we require a pump to go out with an antibiotic treatment for our home infusion patients, our system doesn't automatically know that that pump should always be billed once a month. So we've now used our robotics to say, okay, if it's this therapy and there's no pump bill this month, once you hit the end of the month, let's generate a charge. So you actually get a combination of DSO reduction, quality improvement. You get a little bit of a revenue pickup the way we've built it. But things as simple as, if a payment comes in, can I prorate the balance to the next responsible payer? Some systems do that automatically. Some of our systems do, but some of ours don't. So we've automated that. Again, things like taking the 277 transactions back through a company like any premise, a clearinghouse, and automate next transactions. So if a payer says, hey, this is denied because there's no benefits, the bots now can scrape that and actually do the next step, which then preps it for someone to pick it up and manually work the rest of it, or it could go automatic at that point. So all those work to reduce DSO, improve quality, and increase efficiency. And as long as one of those is there, we typically will pursue the project.
Excellent. The next question, what has been the biggest challenge during this journey? And is there something that you would change in your approach, knowing now where you are?
That's a good one. So here's what I would say. We jumped off, as most things, we try to tackle. We had a lot of eagerness to get started. So we probably didn't think through from day one the right way what our infrastructure should be. We knew we needed to have some bots. We knew we needed to have some, virtual machines. But did we sit down and plot out, for instance, how many of those do I need? How do I train up? Everything I talked through today, did we have that day one? No. So we found ourselves in those first couple of months with some great ideas, and we did good work, but had we planned it more strategically, we probably would have approached it differently. I know as we got into the last budget cycle, we found we needed another, say, 10 virtual machines. So, how quickly do you identify that? How do you make sure people are ready to use them? So that infrastructure discussion was one we probably could have spent a little more time on, but the eagerness to get started was there. So, we kind of jumped and leapt before we really planned it out. And then the other side of it is, once you show the benefits, it's amazing how quickly people want more. And so it became, really important for us to be thoughtful around which projects we wanted to launch next, because everybody wanted it and everybody saw benefits. And our team wanted to build it because, having come out of the business and actually having had worked these systems and these processes, they knew how hard it was. And if they now can fix it, why wouldn't I want to do that? So we had to temper a bit of that exuberance and say, all right, it'll come. Let's do this in a paced way so that we don't overcommit and underdeliver. So those are kind of the two things I would say. If I were to do it differently, I definitely would approach the infrastructure differently and make sure I build more of a robust infrastructure out of the box than I did. But I think over time we've kind of caught up.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. And another question, are there multiple automation teams aligned with their business units at CVS, or one team working across the entire business?
Both. So I've alluded to the fact that CVS proper, corporate CVS, has a very robust analytics and robotics team. Aetna, when we jointly brought Aetna onto the team, had their own team as well. So there are two existing corporate teams. Our colleagues in the operations and clinical area do some robotics in their side. It's a little different in how they're trying to solve things, and that's probably where we do much more crossover, because the work that my team is doing in the revenue cycle back-end area certainly has tentacles up into the front end, especially around things like benefit. So it's a bit of a different answer. Right? So we will cross over with the front end in some cases. We don't cross as much with the corporate team, although I do know as we get into the AI side of the discussion and the predictive analytics, we're going to leverage them in a much bigger way. Although with that, and as I've talked about before, we're using the robotics team to program the bots. But because the benefit to us was having people coming out of the business in many cases who knew the process, it was hard for us to start leveraging external teams. We talked about it, we tried a few business cases, but the benefit to us wasn't there. So, I tend to say I like to control my own destiny. It was better for us to build it internally, and we certainly share and partner as often as we can, but we did create our own.
Perfect. And I think we have time for one last question. Have you built the competency for each of the tools, Alteryx, Automation Anywhere, Tableau, internally, or do you work with your partners to implement that?
Yeah, so internally for the most part. We certainly, we funded a number of our folks getting certified. We've done that through external courses. Most of the time, because we've had it's been basically a homegrown interest, the team is actually self-learning. So, for instance, Alteryx, I'll give you an example. When we first, learned about Alteryx, nobody here had ever heard of it. Our team at least hadn't. And truly the team just decided to go out and learn about it. I didn't bring it to them. It didn't come from corporate. It was something we had heard about, and that team spent weeks going to learn about that tool. They self-certified themselves. They found that there were certifications online. They went and got themselves certified. So a lot of that has come just through the energy of the team. Now, as again, we get into things like some of the AI, will we partner with someone? Possibly. To date, with what we've had to do, we've been successful with doing it internally. And again, that team is very much a self-starter team, so they've really led the charge. They've decided this is how they want to do it. If there was an opportunity, would I, involve an external? Sure. I mean, I'm certainly not, naive to the fact there's benefits out there, but we've been lucky that the internal team's done really well doing it themselves.
Chris, I can't thank you enough for your time today. This conversation was extremely insightful, and we really, really appreciate it. A reminder to everyone to download your resources and watch other webinars on demand available in the resource window to the right of your screen. And once again, thank you so much for your valuable insights, Chris, and thank everyone for their time today, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks. Take care.